The woman wanted to show off to her HOA friends by organizing a classy event at my ranch. I've never been the kind of person who likes trouble, but it seems that trouble finds me anyway. Ever since I bought this ranch, I've tried to live my life in peace. My goal was pretty simple: take care of my horses, enjoy the space, and not get involved with the damn HOA. Yes, because this neighborhood, unfortunately, had an HOA. But luckily, my ranch wasn't part of it, which meant I didn't have to follow any of the ridiculous rules they made up. And that made this woman foam with rage. From the day we met, she acted as if she had the divine right to tell me what to do. First, there were the polite suggestions. Your pasture is a bit too high by community standards. The color of your barn clashes with the rest of the neighborhood. Maybe you could paint it a more neutral shade? Have you thought about replacing the fence? That rustic wood isn't very aesthetic, and I always ignored it. But then she took it to the next level, because one day, without any warning, the HOA decided that my ranch was a community space. That morning, I went out to get the mail and noticed a colorful flyer in my box. I took it without much thought until I read what it said, and, man, I almost choked on my own coffee. HOA's big equestrian event. Come and take part in our community ride. Food, fun, and a great horseback ride. Location, my address, ranch. I blinked. I reread it. And then I saw red. They had scheduled an event at my ranch, without asking me, without telling me, without even pretending that I had a choice. If the HOA were a group of thieves, they would at least have the decency to act in the dark of night. But no, they were stealing like crazy. And the main culprit? The woman who tried to boss everyone around. I threw the flyer on the floor and went straight home, already imagining the scene of horror that awaited me. And, of course, there she was, in the middle of the pasture, giving orders as if she owned the place, wearing new boots and a hat that surely cost more than all her dignity. She pointed at the horses and told them what to do. I saw neighbors helping to set up tents, while a truck parked to unload equipment. And in the background, more horses being brought to the ranch. Yes, they brought horses to my ranch, as if I didn't have my own. I took a deep breath and went straight to her. "What the hell are you doing on my ranch?" She turned around with a rehearsed smile. "Ah, hi! We're getting everything ready for the HOA event. Didn't you get the invitation?" Invitation! She said it as if I were a guest, as if she wasn't trespassing on my property, as if I had to thank them for choosing my ranch for this freak show. My hand itched to pull that ridiculous hat off her head. Invitation? You didn't ask my permission. She rolled her eyes as if I was being exaggerated. "Oh, don't worry. It's just a quick event, just a few hours. And, honestly, the ranch was kind of unused, so we thought you wouldn't mind." My ranch. Unused. I looked around, trying to control the urge to scream, because if I opened my mouth at that moment, I was going to say something that would get me into a legal fight. So I decided to take a deep breath and smile. And the woman, dumb as she was, thought I had accepted. But while she continued her great hostess act, I was already thinking about how to end the event in the best possible way. And so, that night, while everyone was sleeping peacefully, thinking that the event was guaranteed, I began to prepare my revenge. That night, while the HOA members slept dreaming of their fancy and refined horseback riding event, I was in the barn preparing a spectacle very different from what they had imagined. I could have simply canceled the event. I could have kicked everyone out before they even started setting up the stalls, but that would have been too easy. I wanted this woman to feel what it's like to disrespect other people's property. So I did something much better. I replaced all the horses' saddles with cowbells. And they weren't small, delicate bells. They were big, heavy, loud bells, the kind you hear from across the ranch. I tied one to each horse, some around the neck, others securely fastened where the saddle should be. Every move the horses made was going to ring that bell non-stop, and I could already imagine the chaos. After finishing my little modification, I went to sleep peacefully, knowing that the real event was about to begin. The next morning, the HOA arrived early. A group of women were having coffee and taking photos, posting them on Instagram with captions like, "The equestrian event of the year," and "Nothing like community togetherness." Meanwhile, the men were trying to act like great farmers, even though they didn't know how to tie a decent knot. And of course, the woman was at the center of it all, giving orders, telling them who should ride first, smiling like a reality TV star. She wanted to impress everyone. This event wasn't just a ride, it was a chance to show off. And then, the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. The ride was about to start. People started getting on their horses, first slowly, trying to look experienced. But then, the first trots began. The woman frowned. The other riders also began to look at each other, confused. But before they could understand, the horses took a few more steps. The sound echoed across the pasture like a real herd of cows on the run. The confusion was instantaneous. The HOA members didn't know where the noise was coming from. Some began to look around, trying to understand what was happening. But then, the horses started to get nervous. Because, you see, horses don't like loud, sudden sounds. And the bells were ringing directly at them, which meant they thought something was chasing them. So, before anyone could react, the first horse fired. And of course, the bell swung even harder. The man on it clung desperately to the false cell, trying not to fall off. "Stop the horses!" someone shouted, but it was too late. Another horse began to stir, shaking its head, and the bell kept ringing non-stop. The horses were now convinced that they were being chased by some noisy demonic entity. Then they started to run, and it was absolute chaos. Horses shooting across the pasture, people screaming, bells ringing louder than the pride of the HOA. And the woman? She tried to keep her pose, but her horse was already restless, moving his legs and shaking his head to get away from the sound. She held the reins tightly, trying to look in control. But then, the inevitable happened. The horse reared slightly. The bell rang loudly directly in her ear. She was startled. She lost her balance. And then, she collapsed face down on the ground. I couldn't hold back my laughter. The scene was perfect. The great queen of the HOA, with her expensive hat and impeccable outfit, now covered in dust and humiliation. She stood up quickly, trying to regain her pride. But then the horse jerked its head again, and the bell hit her straight in the face. She let out an indignant scream, threw her hat on the ground, and looked around, her eyes full of fury. And then, finally, she turned to me. She knew. She knew I'd done it. And me? I just sipped my coffee and smiled, because her event had just turned into a rural circus. And the best part? The chaos was far from over. If the first part of my revenge had been a spectacle, what came after was a real, unintentional comedy show. The woman was covered in dust and humiliation, trying to process what had just happened. But she didn't have time to pull herself together, because, as she stood up and tried to wipe the dirt off her face, the bells kept ringing, and the horses, more and more desperate. "Stop those horses!" one of the HOA members shouted. Good luck, because those animals weren't stopping for nothing. They were already completely convinced that they were being hunted by some noisy, demonic entity, and every attempt to calm them down only made the situation worse. I saw one of the men trying to pull the reins to control the horse, but the animal shook its head furiously. The sound was too loud, echoing straight into the animal's ear. Then, before he knew it, the horse reared up and shot off. And the poor guy? Well, he didn't last 5 seconds before he was tossed aside like a sack of potatoes. He fell face first into the mud, writhing as if he had been hit by a truck. But no one had time to help, because, in the next instant, another horse ran off in the opposite direction. And, of course, it dragged the rider along with it. The man tried to pull on the reins, but desperation struck, and he clung to the cell with all his might. The problem? There was no cell, so he simply slid down the horse's back and fell on his butt. By now, there were 2 HOA members on the ground, and another 5 being dragged across the pasture. And in the middle of it all, The woman was screaming in desperation. "Stop! Somebody do something!" And the only sound that answered her was the sound of the bell. The woman tried to catch her horse again, still trying to hold her pose, but the animal was in a state of absolute panic. Every time she tried to approach it, it took a step backwards, shaking its head. And the bell? It rang non-stop. With every sound of the bell, the horse seemed to become even more convinced that it was being chased by an evil entity. And then, without warning, he turned and ran. The woman tried to grab the non-existent saddle, but it was too late. The horse shot across the pasture, leaving her behind. She stood there, stunned, staring at the scene with her eyes wide, her hair disheveled, and her pride completely destroyed. And that's when she snapped. "This is your fault!" she screamed, pointing her trembling finger at me. "And me?" I just raised my hands in an innocent gesture. "Me? What do you mean? You're the one who wanted to hold a horseback riding event on my ranch." She turned red, the kind of red that comes before a total breakdown. "You put those damn bells on the horses!" The neighbors who were watching choked with laughter, because now everyone knew it had been on purpose. And the best thing? There was nothing she could do about it, because, technically, I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't interrupt the event. I just changed a technicality. And now, everything was falling apart around her. The HOA, which had once treated her like a queen, was now running away from the crazed horses. The neighbors were recording everything with their cell phones, already imagining how many shares this video would get on the internet. And the woman, she knew that her humiliation was already complete. But she still didn't give up, because people like her never accept losing. So she did what any desperate person would do. She tried to fight back. The problem? She chose the worst possible way to do it. The woman was a complete wreck. The expensive hat that had once been perfectly aligned now lay on the floor, covered in dust and shame. Her leather boots, which had probably cost more than her wits, were completely caked in mud. Her hair, once impeccably groomed to impress her HOA friends, now looked like it had been attacked by a nest of rabid raccoons. But the worst thing? The worst was the look on her face. It wasn't just anger. It was humiliation. Because the big event that was supposed to be the pinnacle of her reign in the HOA had turned into a first-class rural comedy. The horses were going crazy. The bells kept ringing. The HOA members were scattered in the pasture, fallen, dirty, with no dignity whatsoever. And the neighbors? Oh, they were laughing, filming everything and sharing it on gossip groups, ensuring that this story would be told for generations. But, as expected, this woman didn't accept defeat. She stood up, shakily, trying to regain what little dignity she still had. Her chest rose and fell as she took a deep breath, trying to control the explosion that was about to come out of her. But she couldn't. "You did this on purpose!" Her voice came out sharp, full of hatred and frustration. She pointed her finger at me as if I were the very demon responsible for destroying her reputation. But I just crossed my arms and smiled. "You organized this event. I just made it more authentic." She turned red, then purple, then a color I couldn't describe. The entire HOA stared at her, some members still trying to pick themselves up off the ground, others clearly realizing that they had followed the wrong person for too long. She opened her mouth to say something, but at that very moment, another horse jerked its head, and the sound of the bell echoed again. The sound hit her like an invisible punch. She suddenly turned around, as if she was about to throw a historic fit. But instead of screaming, she took a deep breath and made a decision. She marched off across the pasture, stomping hard, picked up her crumpled hat from the ground, shook it, put it back on her head, and walked to her car. He got in without saying a word. The engine rumbled, the tires kicked up dust, and in less than a minute, she was gone. I knew it wasn't over. When someone like her loses, they don't forget. She waits, she plans, and of course, she tried. The next morning, when I went out to look after the horses, I found an envelope from the HOA in my mailbox. As soon as I saw the letterhead, I started laughing. I took the envelope, opened it, and there it was, a fine of $2,000. The reason? Creating a dangerous environment and disturbing the order of the community? Oh, so now I was the problem. Me, who didn't even organize this event. Me, who didn't even call anyone. Me, who just made the horses a bit noisier. I laughed again. I took out my cell phone and wrote an email directly to the HOA board. Dear HOA members, I received a fine regarding the event organized at my ranch, where I was accused of creating a dangerous environment. Just to clarify, I did not authorize the event. I advise you to review this decision before I take this to a lawyer. The guy who just wanted to be left alone, but now he's having fun. I sent and waited. The reply came quickly. 3 hours later, a new email from the HOA appeared in my inbox. After reviewing the case, we have decided to annul the fine imposed. We apologize for the inconvenience. In other words, okay, you got us. We'd better keep quiet. The HOA relented, but her? Not yet. That night, while I was resting peacefully, I heard a strange noise coming from the pasture. I took a flashlight and went to see what was happening. And there she was, crouching by the fence, trying to open the gate. This crazy woman had come back at dawn. May I ask what you're doing on my ranch? She got so scared that she almost fell on her butt. She pulled herself together quickly, but I could already see the fear in her eyes. This is not trespassing, she shouted, clearly desperate. I'm correcting your mistake. I lifted the flashlight and saw what she was holding, a pair of pliers. She was going to try to pull the bells off the horses, but before she could take another step, a low sound echoed across the pasture. She froze, and then she realized she wasn't alone. Behind her, a few meters away, my bull, half a ton of muscle, sharp horns and much less patience than mine. He snorted loudly, scraping his paws on the ground. The woman froze. Her whole body was paralyzed. And then, the bull started walking towards her. Her courage evaporated instantly. She screamed and ran for the fence, but in her haste, she stepped in a hole and tripped, face down in the mud. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. She got up in desperation, ran to the fence and threw herself over the other side. And at the very moment she escaped, I swung a bell. She gave me a look of pure hatred, but said nothing. She just ran to her car and disappeared into the night. After that, she never mentioned my ranch again. In fact, she never looked me in the face again. And 3 months later, she moved out. The HOA got quieter. The neighbors loved me for taking down the tyrant and the horses. Well, let's just say that one of the bells was left hanging at the entrance to the ranch, just to remind everyone who won this war. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.